Good evening. You are listening to Right on Campus, the UW-Eau Claire College Republican podcast. Good evening. You're listening to Right on Campus, the UW-Eau Claire College Republicans podcast. As always, I'm Ryan, the Vice Chair of UWEC College Republicans, and I'm joined with my co-host and working partner, Tatiana, the Chair of UWEC College Republicans. We have a great show for you tonight. Tonight, we will be discussing the current conversation around AI technology in society. With that being said, let's get into the show.
All right, so let's just start with some background on AI and its role in politics in the recent years. AI is somewhat of pretty new technology.
Yeah, changing by the minute.
No, right. And with that being said, Ryan and I are not claiming to be experts on it.
Yeah.
But this is just kind of our experience, what we've seen, and our personal take.
Yeah, not experts here, so take everything that we say with a grain of salt.
So just what AI is, it's a machine or computer that uses technology to learn and solve problems based on training that's done from like massive amounts of information. And it kind of results in this open AI that we see a lot, where you have this chatbot that has like human-like conversations. They answer your questions, they generate ideas, they predict things. And I'm sure most of you know of the most common one, which is ChatGPT. And this is, what I think a lot of students are aware of, and just parents in general. My dad he uses Perplexity, I think, AI.
What is that? Do you know what that is?
I don't know. I just know whenever I ask him a question, he goes, well, Perplexity told me.
I've started using Copilot a lot more than ChatGPT. Yeah, because it's like integrated into the Windows system.
Yeah.
So you can just do it through a left click.
Okay, that makes sense. I use Gemini sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Because it's better with like images and
image
stuff.
creation. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if I'm looking for like a graph or something, or I want it to analyze a graph, then Gemini is the way to go typically. ChatGPT, you ask it to generate a picture, it's terrible.
Well, and I think we'll kind of get into some of this maybe later, but it's interesting that I think a lot of this AI, obviously for consumer use, has got to be nerfed. Mm-hmm. Were you on ChatGPT when it first came out?
Yeah, I can't remember when it first came out, to be honest.
I do. This was my transfer year when I did the year at CVTC, my second year of school. And I remember it came out like 3 days before finals.
Oh, gosh.
And it was a total run on the platform, and like it was crashing all the time. But the first version of ChatGPT that came out was like,
what year was this?
2022, right before 23.
Okay, yes,
right before 23.
I think I do vaguely remember it being talked about in my classes.
I mean, what like blew everybody's mind. Granted, yes, nobody had used a learning model like this before, so there's that to it. But in comparison to what it does now, the first version of ChatGPT was, it was insane. It could do every math problem. It could do anything you wanted it to do. It would give you direct answers. It was so insane. It didn't have the woke parameters, and so it would just give you whatever you wanted. And it got into some trouble too at the beginning, because like you could ask it to like make bombs, or how could you make a gun, and it would tell you how to do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it was truly revolutionary, that first one, and they nerfed it pretty quickly after that. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that that was pretty insane to live through when it first came out. I remember texting my brother. I was like, dude, are you using this? Like, this is cheating. Like, it's life cheating, So.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because we'll talk about this a little more too later on. But like, now I feel like it's such an everyday life of so many people that they don't see it as cheating. And I'm sure that'll just continue to go on. But there is that question of, is this cheating at life? Are you losing out on, the creative ability?
Yeah. No, totally. And, it's what professors, they're having to deal with this a lot. Like, how do you navigate, like, allowing, AI use in your class? And, obviously, like, using AI to complete your tests and quizzes is probably not something you can ever allow. What's the point of even taking the class,
Right.
Like, however, I think a lot of professors who are choosing to implement this into their classes, and I know, shout out to Dr. Green. He I don't think he listens to this, but Dr. Green actually has had a few conversations with me about, like, he teaches some of these
Yeah.
classes, and he's caught some people cheating with essays and stuff, and he's trying to figure out how do where's the line? How do you handle this as a
Right.
first time? And so I think a lot of professors are doing that. What I've noticed is the professors who do allow it will explicitly tell you when to use it, how to use it, how they want you to use it. And I think generally, like, as long as, like, for example, if you're writing a paper, and this is something I admit I love, is I
Yeah.
will use AI to create outlines. Help me create an essay outline.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it has saved my life. I'm good at writing. I can write. We blabber in the group chat all the time. I can write my thoughts pretty well, but it's the creation of an outline for, like, a long form paper that then when it's on there, it's like, then you'll want to, you'll transition it into this main bullet point and this main, it's like, wow, now I actually, like, can sit down and do this over a
Yeah.
weekend or over 3 days or whatever, rather than spending weeks at a time
Right.
creating outlines,
Well,
writing paper.
It's interesting you say that, because I use it in the opposite way.
Do you?
Where I can create an outline,
Yeah.
I can write the paper, but it's the fine tuning it that I
Really?
need help with.
Yeah.
And, like, I spit out all my thoughts, and I think it's just because I think it's the math brain.
Okay,
Where I
yeah.
just have a harder time writing.
Okay.
And so once I have all my thoughts on paper, it's kind of just clunky. So I throw it into AI. I was like, make this sound more professional, or
Right.
make this sound,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And then it, and I look at it sentence by sentence. I'm like, okay, I'll implement this, but not this. Implement this, but not this. And for me, my professors pretty much are like, you just use it like another source. You have to cite it if you use it. And I think that's a good approach. And a lot of them even encourage it for, like, studying.
Yeah.
I just had an exam on yesterday, and I threw my notes into ChatGPT and I said, make me a practice exam. And it spit out this entire practice exam on every single, bullet point I had, pretty much. And that was super helpful. But there's also, the issue of what happens when a professor gives you a take-home quiz that's open notes.
And you just cheat on it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big problem.
No, for sure.
So, yeah. I mean, it's just, I guess we're all learning,
Right.
as we go.
Exactly.
Which is a blessing and a curse, right?
Well, and with us learning, then there's the political system learning and the government learning.
No, right. And I think one more thing to add, little advice. I mean, I'm sure we're all learning this together, as I just said, but if you're going to use it, read what it gives you.
Yeah, don't use it for math
Read it.
either.
Read what it gives you. If you say, hey, can I, you help me with an essay, reread the paragraph.
Right.
You're already letting it do the hard part for you.
Don't copy and
Just
paste it.
read it.
Exactly.
Change a lot of the words, because nobody talks like that.
Right.
Make it a little more conversational. If you're going to actually use this, don't be an idiot.
Right.
I forget the movie, but have you seen the movie clip where it's like Will Ferrell and he gets up to give a speech and it's like total chat.
No.
It sounds like ChatGPT. I'd have to pull up the clip.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's this scene, where he gets up to give this speech and he, like, it's just totally perfect research language, and everybody's like, what in the world? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think we mentioned Dr. Green, like, Dr. Green, he's a professor. Many of our professors, these people have had to do it the hard way. They didn't have it. And so they've read and they've read and they've read and they've written and they've written and they've read. Their job is to read papers. And so when you copy and paste from AI, they sniff that out like a shark does blood. And so
They
please
have
advise
softwares
yourself.
Now. They have their own AI that checks to see if it was AI generated.
Yeah, they're using
even.
AI to check AI.
And which actually a student developed.
Nice.
And so
Smart.
there's some hate for that student, I think. But
Yeah.
but no, like, I think that is a good use of AI. It's important that we're checking to see if people's work is their own or not. There's a whole conversation on intellectual property and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so along with that, we get into all these ethics of it, and you get into politics with it.
Sure.
And a big concern when it comes to politics is AI's impact on elections. And especially with candidates making, like, ad campaigns.
Right.
Or campaign ads.
Okay.
Said
Yeah,
backwards. But yeah. and they'll take something that someone said and they'll tweak it with AI a little to create a different image.
Totally different. Yeah.
Or a different statement. And a lot of times this comes out in just very small ways, like somebody, instead of having a candidate smile in a picture, they just change it so that, they're frowning.
They're scowling or something.
Yeah. And so little things like that. And then there's just the AI generated information about candidates that gets put out there, videos,
That's
pictures,
what I was just gonna say.
like
The deep fake.
Yeah, that stuff
It's
gets
going to
insane.
ruin the world, in my
Well,
opinion.
How do we know what's true and what's not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's been used in the most malicious way possible that I don't totally know of because it's not mainstream yet. But there will come a day where a president or a musician, like a Taylor Swift caliber, like Kanye West, somebody huge at the top of their game, anybody public in society will have a fake video made of them.
That happened to Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
There was all these fakes of, pornographic images of her.
Was there?
That were put out, was it last year or last
I vaguely
semester?
remember that, actually.
But yeah. And it was this huge controversy because she was like, this isn't me.
No, right.
And, it becomes, and even if it's obviously not her,
yeah,
just to know that people
Well, it's your likeness.
Right.
It's you. It's I mean, is it distinguishable? It's like, yeah, because we know it's AI or whatever, but I mean, that's like and pull it closer because as this, we'll get into this, the expense of running an AI platform, but like everything in life, everything with time will get more efficient and then thus will get cheaper.
Yeah.
And so the moment that we can, have this on a mass scale, very professional scale in the hands of the individual, I mean, yeah, you speak of ethical concerns. We're talking about deep fake AI. For those who don't know, deep fake AI is creating images or videos that look identical to a person. Currently, the mouth is off,
or the hands,
or the hands are off. But the voice is pretty good.
Yeah, they're really.
It's not perfect. It's slightly monotone, so you can hear like if somebody's you're like like. And the thing that they always say is this AI. The more of your voice that is online, the better it can be.
Well, right, because it's more for information for it to train
exactly.
off of.
And so like guys like Shapiro, I mean, have you ever seen like a Shapiro deepfake?
Yeah.
It's so convincing. I mean, because he's got thousands of hours of content. I can distinguish. The ones that throw me off big time are Joe Rogan. If you're ever scrolling, people, this is so smart of them. It's so wrong and gross and malicious, but people will create deep fake AIs of Joe Rogan talking to someone to advertise a product. Oh. So you're scrolling and it's like Joe Rogan's voice saying, "Have you heard of this new pill? I tried this new pill. It's so great. It helps me lose fat." And you're like, "Holy crap, like there's no way that this is this is clearly fake. Two, there's no way that Rogan gave approval to this. So somebody's just stealing this guy, his likeness, his voice, his image to advertise to shill their product. And I think that's a huge issue. But to tie it back to my initial point, you get like a disgruntled high school kid whose girlfriend won't, or his crush in class won't engage with him. I mean, like, he could go home and create videos or pictures of him with the girl or worse, I mean, and that's where I think we'll get into as we go on. I think our last segment is ethical and political concerns. But that's just something to think about is I think the phrase, the Pandora's box has been opened is perfect to describe the current layout and culture of what AI is currently capable of doing, what will it be capable of doing in the future, and how exactly are the politics of this going to play out? What role do the people have in limiting, people's use of this? What's fair game? What's not? And then, even if you have laws in place, how do we enforce it?
Right.
If the tech can do it, how do you actually enforce that? Even if a company or a platform can create these images, how are we going to be able to pass laws that force these companies not to allow that or something?
Exactly.
I mean, because what do we do is the question. So yeah, that's my little scathing rant there for a minute, but I think we can move on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think also when you're talking about politics, it's important to talk about the benefits it has.
Oh, absolutely.
As well.
Yes.
I was actually just talking to our advisor, Steve, about this, and he was telling me that he he noticed back in, oh gosh, would it be 2012 when
Barack Obama's second election.
Yeah. That he began using large sets of data to get information on voters and demographics information, stuff like that. AI can do that within seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And it can generate all sorts of data about, who's voting, how they vote, their top issues, all this. And predict even, the future.
Yeah.
And that's great for politics,
Right.
And just efficiency in general in the government,
Right. Right. Or for my marketing class, we have to do this screw net. I think that's what it's called. It's like they call it a simternship, where you're acting as the social media marketing manager for a company, and you're selling. And I've used ChatGPT, and I've said, I am looking to target a 22-year-old college female. Create an advertisement with this type of profile for this person, and it will come up with a perfectly tailored message to a 22-year-old college female.
Yeah.
I mean, you could apply that to the politics, where it's like, specifically here in the Eau Claire area, for example, if you are a Republican or a conservative looking to win office, obviously you need to find who is voting for you. Who's voting for you? Well, the majority of the red votes in our area come out of rural districts. So if you could use AI to make a profile of this rural voter, what are their likes, what are their interests, use AI to actually canvas the Google Maps, find out exactly what bars are these people visiting. Are you visiting the Stone Lake Pub in Stone Lake, Wisconsin? Like we could take the menu. We got the menu online. Let's take the menu. I mean, alter these things in the most perfectly tailored way to fit that voter perfectly. I mean, it's a benefit, right? Like, you can target voters better that way. I also think it's so dehumanizing. It's just
it is. AI in general is
it's
dehumanizing.
so dehumanizing. It takes the person out of it.
No, right. The more you make AI person-like, the more you dehumanize the actual person. It's almost like you're transferring the personhood from the actual person to the AI.
Yeah.
And it becomes very scary.
Yeah.
And so just to wrap up, this kind of section on understanding AI and politics and all that, I think it is important to touch on what's been done politically regards to AI. So not a ton, relatively new.
Yeah.
But Biden did sign some executive orders related to it.
Yes, he did.
And the one I know most well about is the safe and secure and trustworthy development and use of AI.
Is that the CHIPS Act?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
This is no, that's a different act.
Yeah.
This is essentially just him saying we want to be ethical with AI.
Yeah.
And then he goes into 8 bullet points about it.
Okay.
And which many of those focus on diversity in AI.
Oh, great.
And diversity specifically not just in the AI, because there is importance in that to a certain extent, but in the people who are working on the AI.
Oh.
And making sure minority...
Yeah, the DEI stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And so there's concerns among this, is this inhibiting AI development? And there's, that type of stuff.
Probably.
Yeah. And then...
I would say probably. We'll get to why in our next section.
No, exactly. And it also goes on to say that they need to improve the hiring process and attracting AI professionals to the federal government, and specifically says they need to make their path easier to get into the federal government for AI. And then also says stuff about making it more difficult for businesses. Focus on small businesses, but it's like larger corporations, essentially limiting them.
Really? Interesting.
And so just kind of all this stuff where they're elevating the federal government and then some small businesses.
Yeah.
But then those companies that are actually at the forefront of AI, limiting them. So
interesting.
So that's kind of a basic summary. There's a lot more in there of that executive order. But it's interesting. I noticed I was reading through this executive order. Trump's executive orders are so much shorter than Biden's.
Are they?
They're easy to just like
skim through.
Yeah.
I did read a few of them back when we did the executive order podcast, and I read through 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And it takes and the way they're written, I don't know if
just
the
more-
Biden one is different because I can't
It
speak
was
to that.
very
But
legal.
was it? The
Yeah.
Trump ones are pretty easy for your average
I
reader to
agree.
just go and
I've
understand.
read through quite a few Trump ones, and I feel like they're made more for the American people than Biden's
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, nice.
And so, which, I mean, I haven't read a ton of Biden, so it could just
Yeah.
be the ones I've read. But, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at, where we've come.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, do you have any other experience with AI you want to touch
Yeah,
on?
it's funny because we opened the podcast with it, so I don't need to belabor the point. But I remember when it first came out, like it was a revolutionary thing for me.
Yeah.
I think for everybody, obviously. Yeah, I use it. Kind of my daily life. I don't want to say daily.
Yeah.
But it's like it's certainly content dependent.
Yeah, and it's a great tool when it comes to school.
Yeah, you can't use it for math.
No.
It's terrible at math, so you're
it tries to
out
tell
of
me
luck
that
with
like
that.
1 + 1 is 4. And
Yeah, it's so
I'm like,
idiotic.
come on.
I mean, the way that it helps with math is like it does break down the step-by-step
Yes,
way of
math
doing it, but
formulas, it's great.
it's great for that, but like it will still somehow come up with the wrong answer.
Right.
But it will give you the steps to do it. So if you excuse me, if you have the bandwidth to sit and do it, which, I don't know if many people do considering they're going to ChatGPT for everything, like it'll help you that way. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful tool when used correctly. It's super detrimental to you personally, grade-wise, and then intelligence-wise. I mean, there's a lot of value to reading and formulating your own opinion and understanding. So, that's my kind of current outlook on AI in my personal life.
Yeah.
I use it. I actually primarily, I'll tell you this, I primarily use AI as Google.
Yeah.
If I need a quick answer,
I feel like
recipes. I do a lot of cooking for my girlfriend and I.
Yeah.
Recipe. I'm like, give me a recipe on this thing, and it'll just give me everything I need. And when I go online and I'm like, chicken whatever recipe, you'll click, and then you'll get the freaking person's story about why they used to eat this in their family home, and you gotta scroll past 50 ads to get to the middle part of the section where it's like, okay, and here are some of your ingredients, and then you gotta scroll. It's like, okay, so AI can obviously be very helpful that way, and I use it that way. So that's about it. How about you? What do you use AI for?
So I've actually developed an AI in one of my classes.
What?
Just a very basic level.
Wow.
So I have, for those that don't know, I have a computer programming certificate that I'm working on.
Cool.
And last semester in my Java class, our final project was we had to create a game that you played against an AI.
Oh.
And so essentially the way it worked is it learned from how well it did in the previous game and adapted its probability to choose its answer for the next game. And
That's horrifying.
it was really cool though.
Yeah.
And I found it really interesting to just learn the way that it learns.
Okay.
And just how much it's all based off of probability.
Right.
And I think that was really interesting for me. It also makes things a lot more efficient. Talking about studying and stuff. I had this exam, and what was nice is I was cramming for it Wednesday morning. It was Wednesday afternoon that I had it, and I was just kind of trying to finish understanding everything. So the parts I didn't understand in my notes, I would just copy, paste it into AI, and say, reword this.
Yeah.
And it gives you kind of a reworked definition of it.
I see.
And it's amazing in that way.
Yeah, I
and
should
so
start doing that.
I think, for me, my outlook on it currently is like, this is going to revolutionize the workforce, make everything so much more efficient so that we can now go ahead and not spend all this time doing these tasks that, typically take so much time or trying to just understand content. We can rather apply the content in new ways that maybe we couldn't do before, just time and money wise.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree. All right. So I think we can move forward to some of the more current events with AI. So on January 7th, NBC published an article talking about Trump, who gave a speech and mentioned AI. So Trump says, quote, "It should be a wake-up call," end quote, for all American tech companies as the runaway popularity of this Chinese app DeepSeek presented new questions for the administration and congressional leaders. So basically, a couple months ago, the Chinese released a new AI platform called DeepSeek AI. This model is called the DeepSeek R1. And so I think the R in R1 stands for reasoning.
Oh,
It's
that would make
DeepSeek
sense.
reasoning. So I watched some stuff on this. So people like to say that it came out of nowhere. The truth is that DeepSeek AI has been a thing for like
Yes,
years.
this is not the first
Yeah,
DeepSeek model.
right. And so there've been many different versions, but basically some of the more concerning aspects of this DeepSeek AI are that it costs a ton less to use and to generate these responses to function than the OpenAIs or the ChatGPTs, which I think is OpenAI.
Yep, ChatGPT is OpenAI.
And so it presents some significant challenges moving forward. The first thing that I wanted to say with regard to this is this DeepSeek is it uses less memory than OpenAI, and so it also requires less energy to run. And so these American AI models require these giant, computer-based areas, I don't know, warehouses or whatever, and it requires a ton of power to actually run this AI, supposedly. So the reason why I'm going to keep saying supposedly is this obviously is coming out of China.
Right.
And so they have an interest in, presenting this as the American killer, right? And so it encourages investment in China. It discourages investment in NVIDIA and then the Mag 7, tech companies in America. And they quite obviously have a national interest in that. Now, granted, it goes both ways. So do we if we are to knock them or say that this is blowing smoke. What the reports do look like is that this costs them significantly less amount of money to create, to function, and to work. One of the big reasons why this is there's a little bit of politics that comes into this. So the Biden administration had a embargo on chips going from America to China. Okay. And so basically NVIDIA, this huge company, it's the most valued stock in America.
Wow.
They actually call it the most overvalued stock in America, and it took a huge dump after, we'll get to that, but it got after this release. Basically, NVIDIA has different levels of GPU chips, and so Biden and the Americans said, you're not allowed to sell to the Chinese. And so NVIDIA countered and said, well, we need access to the Asian market. We need to get into China. And so the Biden administration allowed NVIDIA to sell these like low-level GPU chips to China. And China, or DeepSeek, the company, it's a startup company in China, was able to supposedly create a on par, or in many cases better, testing AI on these cheap chips. If true, it would just destroy the NVIDIA stock. It would just destroy the entire outlook on how we are conducting this race for AI.
Right. Yeah.
So I mentioned just there the economic ramifications. So I wanted to point out that on the day after the NASDAQ fell more than 3%, NVIDIA stock dropped almost 19%. I think it evened out around 17%. And NVIDIA lost over $600 billion with a B dollars in market cap in one day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and for the longest time, NVIDIA has been this powerhouse that everybody thinks is going to control the future of technology in America. Like, it's going to come through NVIDIA. They have control over the semiconductors. They have control over the GPUs. And so this is the way it's going to work. What happened with this DeepSeek is if true, why isn't NVIDIA doing it? Why didn't an American think of this? And it highlights the overvaluation of the stock and can cause a tremendous amount of uncertainty in an already very volatile and uncertain market. And so this was this spelled big trouble for specifically NVIDIA, but also Apple, Microsoft, who also lost market cap by $400 billion that same day.
Wow.
The way the stock market works, like, these companies are able to rebound. The stock market's a long-term game. So, I was listening to, like, Bloomberg did a whole panel on this. CNN, CNBC. Granted, I know we're not supposed to listen to them, but it's like, we got to get some information.
Right.
And so, again, it's like you can take everything with a grain of salt. But what some of these experts have been, or experts in air quotes, have been saying is, this actually isn't the worst thing in the world, because when a company like DeepSeek can come in and supposedly do it for cheaper and totally jack the market like that, it requires these industry leaders who are American to get up, look in the mirror, and go, we got to figure something out.
Right. It's motivation.
It spurs innovation.
Yeah.
And so that's the benefit, is like, even if this isn't true, what has happened now is these companies are going to work now in overdrive to make this more efficient, to make it cheaper, to do everything that they can to control the primacy of the market.
It's like a game of King of the Hill.
Absolutely. And even if they didn't knock NVIDIA off the top of the hill, NVIDIA now sees that they got further than anybody else ever has.
Right.
And so now it's time to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the response from the government to this? There was a bipartisan bill introduced to ban DeepSeek, which seems to be a trend of the American government, is when a Chinese competitor gets even kind of close, or in the case of TikTok, does knock the king off the hill,
right?
Becomes the king of the hill. You got to ban it, and for better or for worse, like that or not, that's been the attitude. And so they've introduced a bipartisan bill to ban DeepSeek, which obviously hasn't passed. You can still download it. You can still use it.
Yeah.
Have you?
No,
I haven't either.
I haven't either.
I thought I was going to, actually, but I didn't. I chose not to.
I won't. I can't. Knowing it's from China.
It's just going to farm your data.
I'm like, I don't need my data. Granted, they probably have so much of my data already.
Oh, everybody's got our data. Yeah.
But I won't do that.
No, I respect that. And that's why I've been hesitant too. I thought about it the first day. I was like, maybe I do download it, see what the buzz is about. Same with RedNote.
Yeah,
I almost downloaded that too, but I was like,
I deleted TikTok in high school.
Yeah,
and I know once I go back to any of these apps,
it's brain rot.
Exactly,
yeah, it's brutal.
I didn't even let myself download. What was the Instagram one?
Reels.
Threads.
Oh, Threads was the Twitter knockoff.
And I was like, nope, not gonna download any more social media. I'm good with what I've got.
Respect. That's really good discipline.
Not that DeepSeek is social media. But
no, right. I get it.
Similar vein.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so this bipartisan bill to ban DeepSeek was introduced by Representative Darren LaHood, a Republican from Illinois, my home state, kinda, and Representative Josh Gottenmeier, a Democrat from New Jersey. They say that DeepSeek posed a significant espionage risk. Don't disagree. Representative LaHood says, quote, "The technology race with the CCP is not one that the United States can afford to lose," end quote. Totally agree.
Yeah, he's right there.
Yeah, totally agree.
We can't, if they gain this, not only will it be an issue just politically, but I mean, we'll be at war.
Yeah, it's
a technological war.
Absolutely, and we are already. And that's,
right.
That's the thing, is people like to characterize this U.S.-China thing as the new Cold War, which is totally true, in my opinion. And I actually, if we're going to do, Warhawk stuff, if we're going to be looking to challenge or be a little bit more offensive, I support it with China. I have a harder time supporting involvement in some of these other areas.
China's the most direct impact on us.
Well, absolutely. And I used the word primacy earlier. We, as the United States, live in a time where I think there may have only been one other time in world history, maybe two, where there was a true global hyper power, where there was no one even on par. And I think, the characterization may be tired, but it is true. It's the Roman Empire. When you go back to the Roman Empire, there's nobody that can challenge the Romans. The same way with us. For 35 years, post-Berlin Wall falling, end of the Soviet Union, the Americans were unchallenged. We've been unchallenged. We control every aspect of the world. The Europeans demilitarized. We were the world superpower with regard to military, the world superpower with regard to the economy. And we just hadn't been challenged. Now with this rise of China over the last 25, 30 years, you're starting to see that the Chinese are able to, through a myriad of economic factors, cheap manufacturing, and then their high IQ. They're in their tech sector. They're able to innovate, in similar ways that the Americans are. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that like to say that the Chinese just steal and rip our crap off, but that's another debate to have. Like it or not, they are on par. They're a huge economy with a huge population. Yeah. They are a militarized country with a strong military. This is somebody that you would need to look at and think, okay, we need to start hedging bets. We need to protect the Pacific Island chain. We need to protect our ally Australia in the region. We do have a little bit more of an interest with Taiwan than we do even with a country like Israel or a country like Ukraine. Like there's more of a economic influence right there with Taiwan. Japan is a large trading partner. South Korea, huge trading partner.
I think bringing that up brings us to the conversation that we had on tariffs.
Yeah.
And I think people were very concerned about Canada and Mexico's response, but there really wasn't much talk about China's. Yeah. And if anyone's response matters, it's China's.
Absolutely.
And and I think that's really the country we should be most focused on right now.
Yeah. No, yeah. And obviously, all of that stuff that I just mentioned does play a role, but ultimately, when you look at it from a purely economic standpoint, everybody agrees, everybody knows that this AI is the future.
Yeah.
It just is.
You can't unlearn something.
Exactly.
We have the technology. We're not just going to get rid of it.
You can't just get rid of it. And that's the point, is if we cave and we don't lead on this, someone else will. Who is that someone else? It'll be China. And if China can lead, they will put themselves in this multipolar world as a viable alternative to the American global order.
Right.
And if that happens, then you will see a lot, and I don't think people are ready for that. And I think there is a lot of merit in trying to stave some of this off, protect American interests with regard to AI. And if China is going to lead attempt to lead in the AI front, you might want to consider something like a ban or something like a restriction. And so I support this legislation.
Yeah, I mean, I think I support it. Like, it's one of those things where we really don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to piece out.
And that's
my opinion may change on this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the hard issue with all these bans is, like, we don't know what the government knows. We don't really know the security issue because they're not going to tell us how much of a security threat it is. But I'm always hesitant to trust the government.
Right.
But on an issue like this, I'd rather err on the side of caution.
Yeah. Well, I would rather err on the side of the Americans. So whatever that's worth,
Exactly.
Even if I don't trust the government.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned AI Cold War.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about that one, but what else do you think that the government can do? Like, what is the role? Maybe better question is, what is the role of the government with this whole AI?
I think the role
situation?
of the government is to back off, in a sense. Back off not on the Chinese, but on the American people.
Okay.
Let them develop AI.
Great take.
And, let the American people do what they do best.
Yeah.
And that's innovate. And we haven't been there in a long time. But I think under this new administration, we have that chance to be back at the top when it comes to innovation and promote American companies, but ultimately just let them do what they want to do.
Right.
Don't put in all these ridiculous restrictions, especially all these DEI restrictions that Biden had. Things like that. Like, obviously, there's some ethics that comes with it.
Yeah.
And there needs to be some type of standard there. But don't come in and make all these rules to the point that the American people can't innovate.
Totally agree. I think you put it really well there. I think the government has to come in and take a stance on this foreign tech. You don't want to run the risk of them taking the lead and dominating. Right. But at the same time, you can't handicap your own domestic innovation. I do think the government could play a role too in incentivizing.
Yes.
So, giving subsidies or whatever.
I agree, but I'm hesitant there.
Yeah.
Because I think when the government gives you money to do something, they lose any regard for ethics. They just want results.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also you owe them, in a sense, the results they want. And I think you can run, especially with AI, bias is so easily implemented into AI. You have to be careful of that. So I think we should incentivize AI development, but I think we just need to be careful with how we're doing so.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. I mean, this is going to just be a long haul of what do we do's kind of thing.
Right. No, for sure.
So cool. But I think this brings us to brings us back to the ethical future and political concerns of AI. So the first of these is obviously privacy.
Right.
Individual privacy. So, AI works by collecting and storing data,
Mm-hmm.
So, is our data encrypted? Is it safe?
Well, and
are we consenting?
I know. The other thing is healthcare systems are starting to use it.
Oh, boy.
But then you run into HIPAA.
Oh, boy.
And so is there an exception for are we de-identifying these?
Yeah.
Like where does this come in, And I mean, AI could revolutionize the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
It could be great for diagnosing things and,
treatment.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's great. But also, are we violating HIPAA?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, technically, you consent to giving all your data to Facebook and Instagram and Google and anybody. It's just in the fine print. And, if you don't agree, you just don't use the internet, which good luck doing that.
No, right.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, it brings up a bigger question of how do we get back to a point where there's legitimate consent involved with some of this stuff? And, we talk about, as a conservative movement, we all are, essentially, I don't want to say inherently, because there are factions of the conservative movement that do support larger government, but it's like, if we do take this small government approach, how do we protect? How do we protect the individual? How do you protect individual rights without the government?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't know.
You don't. Is the thing. You have to have somebody with a gun.
No, exactly. And I think smaller government doesn't mean no government.
No, right.
And I think, when you get these types of things, okay.
Yeah.
What is the government's role? Like you said, it's to protect the rights of the people. And, and I think it creates some order in society.
Totally. Yeah.
And they can do that by implementing regulations, but I don't think those regulations should be developed by the government necessarily.
Sure.
But rather by people in the field that come together, create some type of board, like we have for the medical system and, that type of thing.
It's an informing kind of thing. Yeah, I don't mind that. Yeah, I mean, this is all stuff I would have to actually think about and read about to really, come up with an idea.
I think these are more just thought provoking than anything.
Right.
But you run into other issues too, like biases. Is that
the
plural?
A bias. Yeah, whatever.
But you run
biases. That seems right.
So you run into issues like biases, and where AI is trained based on the information it's given.
Yeah.
You feed it what you want to feed it.
Right.
And then there's just it works, I talked about earlier, through probability. Well, when you have a higher ratio of one group being represented, you run into a bias there where AI will just neglect other groups because the probability is so high.
Yeah.
Which, how much does this matter? Like, if the majority is being represented, just know that when you're utilizing it. But also, it matters because it matters how we train people to use it, I think.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to understand when you're using it.
Right.
And then there's just the question of, we talked about it's woke in a sense.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it is.
How do you think that happened?
Well, and that's the thing is, I kind of chuckle when DeepSeek AI comes out and Red Note comes out and all the conservatives, granted, we do talk about the wokeness of American AI, but everybody on Twitter online is like, look at what happens when you ask what happened on Tiananmen Square to DeepSeek. It tells you it was a beautiful day in China. It's like, they don't want to talk about the Tiananmen Square massacre of, the protesters and stuff because that's anti-Chinese prop,
right.
but the same thing can apply with ChatGPT. You know, if you ask it, you know, to write, like there are times where like writing these outlines, like I'll be like, give me a conservative perspective or give me a Republican take on this. And it'll tell me like, this is extremely controversial. And if, you know, it's like, okay, like I get it, bro. Like I'm not, and granted, should ChatGPT be telling you how, like what I said earlier, should it be telling you how to make a bomb? No. Like, no. But at the same time, it's like, you know, I mean, where's the line between you trying to be a domestic terrorist and like me just wanting to have information, you know? Like,
no,
so
exactly.
You know, there certainly should be parameters, but the bias piece is huge. It's like you get statistical information, it's bias. You get opinion based, ask it to write you something, and it's like got some, you know, liberal words thrown in there, and you're like, what in the world? Like,
I run into it all the time with.
Yeah.
I use AI a lot to write our descriptions for our podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of give it like, this is what we talked about, like, you know, give it some parameters, and it spits something back out. And I remember specifically when we talked about Dylan Mulvaney and the transgender issue, it gave me this very woke take on promoting transgenderism, and I had told it was a conservative podcast, and it still spit like, how can we be inclusive and conservative? And I was like, and I had to like, I said like, we don't like him, and then it changed it, and it, you know, and I think it gave me the controversy statement or whatever.
It makes you work for it. That's true.
That's very true. But and then there's the question, still kind of on the line of DEI liberal type ideas, but sustainability. And, you know, is AI energy consumption too high? Is there too much electronic waste? But is AI gonna, you know, just fix those things because it can solve problems?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I feel like right now that's not our issue. Our issue is getting ahead.
Yeah.
But it is something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, like, yeah, we can worry about some of the more technical points of this stuff a little later. I think by far what is the first thing that we need to do? We need to create ethical guidelines.
Right.
You have to have legal ethical guidelines in place that, you know, say that from this point forward and anything, you know, that's been created in the past, like if it's an image of a person, you know, I don't know. I mean, because that's the weirdest thing is if you're a public figure, you know, your likeness is out there. And yeah, I mean, like, you know, if you draw a photo, should it be illegal to draw an art picture of like somebody doing something? Like, where is the law in that? If it's created by a human, like we would have less of a problem, but because it's a computer, it's like we got to figure out how to set some guidelines there. And then I think there's another one in here that I think you prepared for this outline, but the labor disruption.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really scary thing is, you know, automation for all time has been the death of industry. I mean, for certain industries, for certain people, like it's benefited immensely, all of us forever, but in the time of when it's happening, it can cause a lot of pain. And so how do we figure out, you know, how to bridge this gap of like, you know, like for example, sewing machine. Take the sewing machine for example. Everything was sewn by hand forever. And so there was a huge job market where you always needed somebody to sew.
Right.
You get a sewing machine, you can cut your labor force by 50+%. All these people are out of a job. They've only ever sewn their whole life.
So I think AI differs in the sense that it's a tool, not a replacement.
Yeah. Well, it could replace some people.
But I think what it's
Do you need somebody at McDonald's taking your order?
No, but I think you can use those people to do something better. Right.
Like, well, and that gets into the other thing is like, you could probably, there's some in South Korea, they have robots cooking stuff.
Right.
You know? Like,
and I think, yes, there's going to be an initial issue with the labor force.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what's going to happen is when you implement this in a lot of companies, what it's going to do is it's not going to replace the person. The person's just going to be able to do their job better and more efficiently.
Right.
And it's going to free them up to do more, to be more innovative.
Yeah.
You know, kind of what we were talking about before.
But so like, for example, like if I'm running a company and I have a accounting division.
Yeah.
And we get the best freaking AI out there.
Yeah. And
I have an accounting group of 20 people to do all my work and work for me and check each other and all that. If I could test and say that this AI is 97% accurate, you know, maybe I shrink my 20-person group down to 3. And then I let the AI do the accounting, and then I have these 3 people to audit the AI. And now I don't have to pay 17 people 70 grand a year when I can just pay 3 people 70 grand a year. Like, and so that's where this issue comes in, because then there's only going to be, 3 jobs per company if they decide to go with those kind of auditors or whatever. I mean, that's the risk is.
I think the issue is going to be, it's going to eliminate certain types of jobs and
Right.
open up different types.
Right.
And so this transfer of like, where do these people go in the meantime?
Yeah.
But I do think it will create more jobs ultimately as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that makes up for it or is more overall, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I guess in the science field versus like your field in like the marketing realm and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
Where for me, AI helps me just do my job,
Mm-hmm.
and my whole degree is engineering. It's developing.
No, right. And I'm with you on that. Like, I'm a marketing major with an emphasis in sales. I'm looking to go into sales. Sales is a personal thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to, I mean, like, maybe people, well, if you're in bulk order stuff and you know what you're buying, it's a straight rebuy or whatever, like, you're going to just boop, boop, boop. I'll take 40 cases. But if, there's always going to be a role for a person.
Right.
If people are buying, people need to buy from people. There's a trust factor involved. So personally, I'm not necessarily worried about AI coming to take my job. It's just there's a lot of people out there that, if this stuff gets good enough, it's going to not be ideal. And then I think you see people get super liberal. I think you see people get either super liberal in the sense that they want, for example, I saw this is the reason why I say this is, and I'd have to retool the way that I say this because it could go either way, right? You could get a bunch of reactionary Christian hardliners who are like, no, get this crap out of here. It's dehumanizing, which is based. But it's like you could get universal income people.
Yeah.
You lose your job and you can't work because AI's taken all the jobs. These people are going to start demanding that they get money. I mean, they can't work.
And that is a good point.
And are they wrong?
I think you're going to, and I think, we talked about,
It's just a lot to
before we
think
came
about.
on the podcast, we talked about American culture.
Yeah.
And what is the American culture? And it's a work ethic.
Absolutely.
It's working hard and it's working your way to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've fallen away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think initially what we're going to see is people are just going to want to not work.
Yeah.
And the AI is going to come in, take their job, or even just the fact that they don't have to do as much for their job anymore.
Right.
And you're going to see work ethic decrease. But I think the competition that we're having with China, you're going to have different people increase their work ethic.
Right.
Competition is, what work ethic thrives on.
Right.
And so I think you're going to see kind of this imbalance of people either decreasing work ethic and increasing it. But ultimately, things don't run well when you don't work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it brings people back. That's why we reelected Trump.
Yeah.
Was they saw what happens when you don't have to work, when nothing's based on merit.
Totally agree.
And, people saw prices rose.
Well, or just work in general. Like,
Right.
like when you just pull people from the labor force and give them stimmy checks and like pump money into the economy. Like, it's a bad recipe. So,
Exactly.
I'm with you. I just have heard people saying like, if we lay off literally millions of people because AI is just replacing them and can do their job better than they could even try to do it. It's like, are we wrong for doing that? For efficiency's sake, no. Like, you want the best. We want to live in the most efficient, the best place where we can rely on stuff like this. But at the same time, it's like, like if these people can't work, the excuse isn't necessarily going to be like, hey, bro, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps if there's 100 million people who just can't work because there aren't jobs. Like, and so that's just the fear is, and people could listen to me say this and be like, oh, this guy's crazy. Oh, he's a liberal. No, it's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying I support that. I'm just saying that, this stuff happened in 5 years, in 10 years, in 35 years from now. Like, we do need to start to think about when this stuff really takes flight, when it really starts to become a daily thing in our lives, when you are stopping at McDonald's and it's an AI voice instead of a person.
But I think the other thing it's going to do is eventually, and this won't happen initially, but eventually people are going to get tired of talking to an AI.
Oh, for sure.
And business is going to thrive off of human connection.
That's such a good point.
Like, I mean, we saw it after COVID, you know, there was like this huge small business spark.
Boom. Yeah.
And
after they killed like 50% of them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
People
so-
valued it. Yeah.
Exactly, because they
Right.
missed the human connection
Right.
aspect.
Yeah.
So that'll be another interesting to see how that plays out.
That's super
But you
white
do-
pilled. Yeah, that's
you
super
do-
goated. Yeah.
You do raise, valid
No, yeah, for sure.
concerns.
Well, it's like I love that. I think that's a really I'm going to say it again. I really like that take. That's really optimistic, and I do resonate with that a lot because it's like I value the human connection. I think we all do. Even if you don't like the person's not smiling or is rude to you or
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
Like the fact that you're there, you think about it was what 3 years of kind of COVID,
Right.
And that drove people to the wall. It's like if you had like 10 years of straight AI just dominating, you'd pretty quickly get people to rally around people.
Right.
And that's trouble for the AI,
No, exactly.
The robots will never get us.
Yeah. No, for sure. So there's a whole lot to think about when it comes to the AI and ethics and politics.
One more thing about ethics and the future.
Yeah.
If we were to move, which it looks like the world is industrialized, Western, and first and second world are going to be moving into this AI sector. What happens if someone just pulls a plug?
What do you mean?
Shuts it off? What if,
Oh.
and that's not it's plugged into the wall, shut that thing off. But not to be another crazy lunatic, but electromagnetic pulse devices are a thing. They
Yeah.
are a thing. They've been used before. An electromagnetic pulse happens when a nuclear bomb is detonated in the air, but it can also be a device. Basically, what it does is it fries the grid, shuts everything down,
Yep.
and it's almost impossible, but very difficult to get everything back up in a timely manner. If we were which we are, a very technologically dependent country already, but if you started doing that with everything else, like with different industries, and something like that were to happen, what would that do? Or, forget about us. What would happen if a war is going on in a third world country and somebody just shuts them off? I mean, what kind of a humanitarian crisis would that start? And then
that's a
who is
really good
responsible
point.
for helping? I mean, it's just this never ending what if with this AI
Well, and I
conversation that
think
just really
Whenever
rattles
you
my
bring in,
brain.
whenever you bring in new technology,
Yeah.
you're bringing in new risks.
Oh,
and that's,
certainly.
And that's
Yeah.
just kind of the way technology works and innovation works is you are bringing in something new,
Yeah.
something we don't understand, something that has different flaws from what our current society has.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to get these what ifs, and some of them are valid and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see which ones play out, I guess.
Yeah.
I think eventually we're going to start to see some type of security system in place to prevent something like that.
Yeah.
With the amount, I think what's going to happen is that's going to happen to some country somewhere.
Yeah.
And then the other countries are going to be like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
We can't
Or we're
let
going
that
to start
happen.
getting conventions on this
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Or see we have the SEC or the NIH. You get these governing bodies, kind of like what you were saying, just about the internal
right.
stuff. But you might get something more at that level, where there's somebody, we have to set parameters for some of this stuff. But
Right.
it's so novel, it's so new. So again, I started the podcast with this, but we'll end it with this too. It's like everything that I'm saying here, my opinion probably will change in a month because the tech will change in a month and the circumstances will change in a month. And so it's like, I mean, my principles will always be the same. I will forever be a human first person, but it's like, it's so dystopian to say that. It's really scary, but it's
No,
just, it's
right.
like, I don't know. This is not a topic that I'm totally gung ho about and know a ton about. So,
Well, I don't think anyone does.
Right,
know?
yeah.
It's
There's
either
just a lot to learn.
You know a lot, or you
Yeah.
don't know anything. And even considering I have a certificate in programming
Yeah.
and I'm an engineering major,
yeah.
I mean, my classes talk about AI, but I still feel like I don't know a
Yeah.
ton.
No, right.
And so it goes to show
Right.
how big this thing is.
And even the best experts, a month ago, thought, dump all your money into NVIDIA. There's
Right.
no losing. It'll never go down. It's perfect. It's going to control the future. And then this happens, and they lose $600 billion in valuation in one
Right.
day.
Yeah.
And so nobody can even see that stuff coming, even the top experts. So it's there's a lot to learn with this, and we got to just keep adapting as it comes on. And yeah. So do you have any final thoughts on AI in general? Any cautionary warnings to the populace?
I mean,
the 12 people who listen to this?
Considering the people that listen to this are students,
Yeah. and parents.
Yeah. I'll say what Ryan said in the beginning.
Yeah.
Be smart.
Yeah, please be smart.
Don't be stupid. We do not condone cheating.
Yes.
Integrity is a big deal. And, just think about that when you're considering opening your browser to ChatGPT.
Don't deviate away from Canvas.
Yeah, do you know Canvas can...
It tracks you.
It tracks you.
Heck yeah.
So just be smart with it, but also learn about it because it's here and it's here to stay.
Yeah.
And it's better to be in the know than not to know anything.
Yeah.
And so I do encourage you to play around with it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't give out your social security number.
Please
or
don't give it
anything,
any information.
Yeah. But
Yeah, that's what I would say too, is make it work for you. Like make this, and yes, we're in school, so obviously we have this ethical line between what's cheating and what's not. But think about in your career someday, like how useful of a tool this would be in your daily life. Like I think about people at, the branch that I work at, and it's like, God, like if they just had a tab open with ChatGPT and they're just asking it 1,000 questions, and like if it was perfect or almost perfect and accurate, how good could you really be? Like how far could this tool help you go? And so I think that's another thing to think about. Think about how this can help you in your daily life,
right.
And implement it that way. Make it work for you. Don't be beholden to it. Still do your reading, still go to class, still do all that stuff. You need to be your own expert, but if you need a crutch, if you need some help, go to ChatGPT, go to OpenAI, go to DeepSeek, go to whatever you need to go to. But yeah, my final piece on this is just make the AI work for you, and then pray to the good Lord that we don't get replaced by robots.
Yeah, no, that's a good take. Yeah, or China.
Yeah, or Chinese AI bots. Yeah, either way, we'll be fighting. Well, it's the Terminator movie. Shoot, yeah. I mean, where do you shoot those things? Like, you take its head off? It's like a zombie, or
you get
what?
That
like,
electromagnetic pulse.
oh yeah,
that
we
you're
EMP
talking about.
the country, and then we go back to like 1865. We're like farming. We have like horses.
Honestly.
Yeah, bro, sign me up. Sign me up, straight up. Oh man. Anyway, so next week we're going to be talking about just a current events catch-all. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. Maybe some internet drama, maybe some current events. We'll talk about a whole bunch of stuff, so that'll be a fun, more casual episode for you. So please make sure you check that out next Friday. With all that being said, thanks for listening to Right on Campus. We post this podcast weekly where we tackle current events and life as a conservative on campus. If you'd like to learn more about UW Eau Claire College Republicans, join our meetings on Monday nights in Centennial 1704 at 7 p.m. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at UWEC College Republicans, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or favorite and share this podcast if you're listening on Spotify. Have a great night. Thank you for listening to Right on Campus. We post this podcast once a week where we talk about current events and life as a conservative on campus. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at UWEC College Republican. Have a great night and see you next time.